It's a big day today, guys, not only because it's the FOMC day, but also because Bitcoin is now at 92,000. And you know why that makes it a big day? It's because Bitcoin is now at the same level that it was on the 1st of January this year, which means that this whole year, if you've been holding Bitcoin, it's been flat. But the good news is that today I'm going to show you why I think the catch-up trade has already begun. That little pump that we got yesterday, I think that was the beginning of what's going to be a massive catch-up trade. And I think that catch-up trade has begun. And the hint here is that I'm not actually looking at the Bitcoin chart. I'm going to show you a whole lot of other indicators, which kind of show me that even though we're not getting this massive Bitcoin bull run yet, I think that yesterday it actually started. And today with the FOMC, I think it's going to continue. It's also a big day because it's my last show in the studio. Tomorrow I'm going to Solana Breakpoint. I'm going to be bringing you coverage from Solana Breakpoint. And then next week I'm actually on vacation until the end of the year. So it's a massive day today. It's our big show together. It's our last in-studio show together. It's on the day of FOMC and on the day where I think the breakout has actually started. Let's get this show on the road. How crazy that the 2025 year is pretty much finished. Like, I mean, it's December. Today's December 10th. I'm going to Solana Breakpoint tomorrow. I'll be at Solana Breakpoint. And then when I'm back, and then I'm back, and then I'm going on vacation. I might be here if the market actually brings us stuff to talk about. But otherwise, that's pretty much the end of our time together in 2025. So listen, if you've had fun with us in 2025, and I know 2025 was an absolute brutal year for crypto. We're going to talk about that today. Then smash a like button. Let me know who was here, who's not here. If you weren't subscribed in 2025, subscribe. There's, I think 2026 is going to be an amazing year. And I'm going to show you again today why I think 2026 is going to be an absolutely amazing year. Before we carry on with the show, if you have been here, I just want to thank you for your support in 2025. It's been absolutely amazing. I think we've got an amazing community. It's been getting bigger and bigger. We've got this loyal community that have stuck with us through thick and thin market moves. And if you're here now, after the markets try to shake everybody out, I mean, congratulations and well done. And I'm very happy to have you as part of the fam. Anyway, let's move on to markets. And I'm counting on you guys to actually smash the like button and get going. But let's look at what's actually happening. As I said, it's a very big day today. It's a big day because there's FOMC. I don't think there's going to be any surprises in terms of the interest rate cut that we're going to get. I think it's going to be a 25 basis point interest rate cut. But it's also a big day, as I said, because Bitcoin is now at the same level that it was on the 1st of January 2025. And I can't actually believe that I'm saying that, because this is like supposed to be, or has been, the asset that has been the best performing asset in the last decade. Literally the best performing asset in the last decade after Nvidia. But if you look at what Bitcoin's done this year, it hasn't effectively been a very good year for Bitcoin. Just look at how Bitcoin has diverted from the gold chart, the Mag 7 chart, the SPX chart, the QQQ, which is a NASDAQ. And just look at how badly Bitcoin has performed in 2025. Look at it when you look at it against gold. This is quite a scary chart. Since the 1st of January 2025, Bitcoin has underperformed gold by 40%. So you would have been, believe it or not, you would have been better off by 40% had you just held gold instead of Bitcoin. Crazy to think. If you look at that chart against silver, if you would have just held silver instead of gold, instead of Bitcoin, you would have performed 52% better by just holding silver instead of Bitcoin. If you look at Nvidia and you look at Bitcoin over Nvidia, you would have been 25% better this year by just holding Nvidia instead of holding Bitcoin. So it's definitely one of the most disappointing years that Bitcoin's had. And specifically, if you zoom out, it's okay, it's still the best performing asset of the decade. And number 2 is Nvidia. But what a disappointing year for an asset that is so good. Now, when that happens, either something's broken in the asset class, or it could mean that we've just been through a correction and there's a massive catch-up trade that's actually about to happen. Since there's nothing fundamentally broken with Bitcoin, since we know that there's nothing fundamentally broken, nation states are starting to adopt it, the ETFs are starting to adopt it, real institutional adoption actually only really starts in 2026. Because if you think of the institutional adoption that we had in 2025, that was what you call the early adopters in the institutional adoption. It's family offices, it's funds that are sitting on small money. The funds that are sitting on big money, the sovereign wealth governments, etc., these guys aren't buying Bitcoin, weren't buying Bitcoin until there's the right legislation and regulation in place. And that's only coming in now with the Clarity Act, etc. So with that in mind, I think 2026 is going to be a good year, but that's not what I'm basing my thesis on. I want to talk to you about the thesis and why I think that we're about to see the biggest catch-up trade that we've ever seen. I'm going to show you actual data and actual charts. But before that, maybe let's just talk for a few minutes about the FOMC, because I think the FOMC is the biggest event of the day. And I think that when it comes to the FOMC, I think what's given in this FOMC is that we are going to get a 25 basis point rate cut. And analysts are saying, or are calling this a hawkish rate cut. So what is a hawkish rate cut? Because I've never actually heard the term a hawkish rate cut before. A rate cut is supposed to be a dovish thing. It's supposed to be a bullish thing. What is a hawkish rate cut? So I did a little bit of reading around this hawkish rate cut. And what they're saying is a hawkish rate cut is a rate cut that effectively happens whilst let me try and get you a definition of this rate cut. So a hawkish rate cut is effectively a rate cut that happens whilst the Fed has got no data, whilst the dot plot, which is also coming out tonight, is a negative dot plot, and where members actually split and dissent around whether there should and shouldn't be a rate cut. And so what they're kind of alluding to, the fact is that tonight we will have a rate cut, but it's not a rate cut because everybody wants it. There's no data, so they're kind of saying, look, we're going to cut rates, but we're doing this without any actual data. Remember, there was no CPI reading, and now the CPI reading has actually been kicked out to the 18th of December, which is 8 days from now, so to speak. The jobs numbers were actually okay. And so what we're looking for here is we're starting to see this hawkish rate cut. Hawkish rate cut means we get a rate cut. Powell comes out and starts talking hawkish. We didn't have data. We need the data. We believe the data is not going to be so good coming into January, etc., etc. And so that's what people are expecting tonight. We're expecting the rate cut, but we're expecting a hawkish Powell. And then the big question is whether we respond like we responded in every other FOMC, and that is that straight after the FOMC, we basically went down. Most of the most recent FOMCs, as you can see, October, September, July, June, have been down. May was slightly up, and then the other two have actually been down. So the question is whether we actually get that today or whether there's a break in tone. Now, when I look at the data around it, it looks like there's something going on between Powell and Trump again. And I don't know why Trump's actually doing this, because it's evident or it's obvious that Powell is out in May next year. And so the guy's got like 5.5 months left of his tenure. And if you look at that 5.5 months, it means that effectively Powell has the 10th of December, which is today's FOMC. He has January, he has March, and he has April. But by that date in April, his successor will already be announced. And so I wonder what Trump is trying to do here around Powell. What he's leaning on now is he's saying, look, remember that Powell was by the way, Trump, he was the one who brought Powell into the Fed, but Biden re-elected him or reappointed him. And this guy is talking, or Trump is talking about this being done with Biden's auto pen, and therefore he's trying to deem it that Powell's re-election or reappointment was actually not bona fide. Listen.
We have a lousy Fed chair. And by the way, it looks, you're going to have to check this, please. I just heard it could be that all 4 commissioners in the Fed signed by Biden, including Too Late. You know who Too Late is? Too Late, pal? Jerome Too Late. He's too late with his interest rates for a reason. He's a bad guy. He's not a smart guy, but he's a bad guy. Too Late. Is he going to lower rates a little bit, finally? Did you see where Jamie Dimon, respected guy, said, you got to get the rates down, you schmuck, But I hear that the auto pen may have signed those commissions. If they signed those commissions, now maybe I'm wrong, but we're going to check. Have you checked that? Are you hearing it? Who signed it? Did he sign it or did the auto pen sign it? I'm hearing the auto pen. You can't use the auto pen unless it's very strongly authorized, unless you show you know what the hell you're doing, which is impossible of him to show. So, I don't know. I think it's something we have to look into. You put people there that are not authorized to be there. I know I signed Chris Wright. I signed everything, but I signed Chris Wright, If I gave you an auto pen, they could throw you the hell out of here, Chris.
So that's the new drum that Trump is beating on. He's basically saying, look, this was signed by an auto pen, and if it was signed by an auto pen, then effectively the re-nomination of Powell into the Fed is probably like not valid. I don't know why it makes a difference, because you're not really going to reverse all his decisions. So it just feels like there's big tensions and drama behind this. And I think that Trump's actually been quite serious about checking whether this was reappointed by Biden's auto pen. It feels more and more like 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 is the front runner for Powell's replacement next year. And he was interviewed yesterday, and he basically alluded to the fact that Powell is doing the right thing by cutting rates tonight, and he should be cutting even more. And that's why we actually got the pump yesterday. The reason why we got the pump yesterday is because people are starting to believe more and more that 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 is going to be the chair of the Fed. And this is what he actually came out and said yesterday.
You know, I think that basically what the Fed is doing right now is that Jay Powell has done the right thing, which is he's taken the far left people of the board and he's coalesced them around, it looks like, a rate cut, which is the right move right now. I might like a bigger one, but I think that that's what the Fed chair has to do. Don't forget, you're managing a committee. And so getting rates down right now, it's a good thing. There's a lot more room to go. And the reason is that it's really important. This is not just like guessing, that because of the Trump boom in supply, because we've got 18 trillion in new factories, with 30 of them groundbreaking before September, between September and now, then that increases supply, that puts downward pressure on prices and upward pressure on growth. And so that's the kind of room that we had in the 1990s when Alan Greenspan gave us 4 or 5 years in a row of really low interest rates and really high growth. And that's something that a Fed chair can do again right now. I'm confident.
So now you know why Trump is so excited, or why the market's so excited about getting this guy in, because this guy is literally exactly what Trump wants. He wants to go down to near zero interest rates for a whole lot of years, and he's justifying why he can actually do this. For Trump, he's basically saying, he was asked if the new Fed chair will be expected to lower rates immediately. I want you to hear how definitive he was with his answer.
I want to ask about interest rates, because a lot of Americans agree with you that they're too high. You're going to pick a new Fed chair soon. Is it a litmus test that the new chair lower interest rates immediately?
Yes.
I mean, yes.
Well, this guy should too, but I think he's a combination of not a smart person and doesn't like Trump.
I want to ask about
Goodness. Okay, so that is why the markets actually reacted yesterday. There is a 71% chance that 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 on Polymarket, that 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗏 is 72% now, that he is going to be the next Fed chair. There is one thing that I read here. There's a guy called Demarks, and he's a polymarket trader. He's an ex-poker player and a very successful polymarket trader. And he's betting his opinion. He says he's betting that 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 is a bimbo political hack and has no business anywhere near the Fed chair position, which is actually one of the hardest and most important jobs in the world. My opinion doesn't matter, and Trump obviously isn't afraid of picking total morons like RFK, 𝗘𝗫𝗀𝗃, etc. Says, but 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏 in the Fed would be worse than all of the rest of his bad people combined. So split opinions basically around this. So that's what's happening in the US. Remember, we are going to talk about the big catch-up trade in a sec. So we'll talk about one more thing before we get there, and that's rates in Japan, right? So we're talking about the FOMC today, and that's rates in the United States. But don't forget that also on the 18th of December, the Japanese Fed, or the Japanese Central Bank, meet, and they're talking about whether or not they should raise interest rates, right? And right now, the consensus is that 90% of people believe that the Bank of Japan is actually going to hike interest rates. Why is this such a big thing? Because if you look at the Japanese interest rate chart and you look at it for as much time as you possibly can, what you can see, and by the way, you guys are watching that I'm getting all my information on investing.com, right? This is one of my favorite platforms to get information from. And I've obviously subscribed as one of the pro subscribers, and there's got this thing called Warren AI, which is basically, it's like the equivalent of ChatGPT, but for anything finance and stocks related. If you ever need a resource to help you, like when I wanted to break down this Japanese interest rate thing, I just use Warren.ai. It's so much better than using like a ChatGPT because it's actually focused on finance, which is very, very helpful. So you can see the Japanese rates have always been near zero for many years. And that's what started the Japanese cash and carry trade. They used to borrow at zero, and then they used to go and invest that in the US at 4 or 5%, and then they used to make the differential, right? And when the interest rate in Japan increases, that means that it's not that lucrative to borrow in Japan and go and invest in the US. But now, what makes it worse is that if the Japanese interest rate is increasing and the US rate is decreasing, then it makes that trade very, very, very unattractive. And when that trade is very unattractive, that's what sparks off what they call the unwind of the Japanese cash and carry trade. So if you look at the stats here, Japan is the second largest holder of US T-bills. Actually, now they're the first largest holder of US T-bills in the world, right? And those T-bills are being held because people were borrowing money in Japan for free. And what they were doing is they were investing it in US T-bills. Now the US T-bill rate is going down and the Japanese interest rate is going up. And that should mark the unwind. Now the good news with that unwind is the following. Number one, it's an orderly unwind. In other words, a big part of it already unwound the last time they did this. And as they raise interest rates, more and more of it lands up unwinding. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is that so if you look at the news, that news is already out in the markets. And so as Ben Kahn said, he said, in July 2024, the Fed cut rates while the Japanese BOJ was raising rates. That led to the end of the Japanese cash and carry trade unwinding. Bitcoin capitulated it and found a low 1 week later. Good chance this happens again. So I think this is really a buy the news or sell the news type initiative. In other words, everyone knows it's going to happen. It's on Kalshi. This is the beauty of prediction markets, right? Because prediction markets are giving us such accurate data. And this is an industry that never ever existed before crypto actually existed. So if you ever question whether or not crypto has a use case, just look at what prediction markets have done for crypto or what prediction markets have done to the world. And what you can see is that this is already priced in. And so there is a chance that Ben Kahn's right here, 18th of December, Bitcoin, they do raise rates. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Oh, actually, hold on a second. This has already all been pre-priced. And now we can continue to basically go up. So that's also showing me that the Bitcoin bottom is near or here. But I want to talk a little bit more about the main thing. And the main thing that I want to talk about is the big catch-up trade that I've been talking about. I spoke to you earlier in the show and I said to you, I'm more convinced than ever that this is not the end of the bull market and that this is a correction and there's going to be a massive catch-up trade happening, and that catch-up trade's happening starting right now. Now, when you look at the Bitcoin chart, you're like, no, there's no catch-up trade starting right now. There's just a little bit of a catch-up trade. Well, I want to show you a couple of things on the Bitcoin chart, even though this is not the chart I'm looking at. Higher low, higher low, higher high, higher high, higher high. This is a clear uptrend. Say what you want, this is a clear uptrend. But that's not the chart that I'm looking at. I'm actually looking at a whole lot of other charts, and a lot of those other charts are completely unrelated to Bitcoin. I want to show you the charts that I'm looking at that are giving me these clues to show you that there is a catch-up trade actually starting, and I think that Bitcoin's going to go next. So the first chart that I'm looking at is actually the silver chart. I don't know if you guys have been watching silver, but silver is now at $62. It's broken out of this massive 50-year cup and handle. This is a 50-year cup and handle. That's 1980. That is 2011. And this chart is now broken out of a 50-year cup and handle, which means that silver may actually have a very, very, very long way to go. Now, the reason why I like this so much is because it shows that people are moving to the riskier asset. The gold run has happened. People have now moved from gold to silver, right? This silver and copper are indicative of the business cycle, and the business cycle seems to be expanding. And generally, Bitcoin responds well to an expanding business cycle, right? And so what you're seeing here is you're seeing silver exploding. That's not the only reason why I'm bullish. Silver is one of the reasons why I'm bullish. The next reason why I'm bullish is I look at the ETH BTC chart. And if you look at the ETH BTC chart, what you're seeing is that ETH actually has relative strength against Bitcoin. ETH BTC is over the 50-week SMA, whilst Bitcoin is under its 50-week SMA. That shows me that the risk assets are actually starting to move again, right? And then I can validate that thesis by looking at Bitcoin dominance, right? So BTC.D. And if you look at the Bitcoin dominance, what you're starting to see is that the Bitcoin dominance is actually starting to break down. That's not what happens in a bear market, right? So what you can see is that there's a move to silver here, which is a move to risk. Then there is a move to ETH from Bitcoin. Then I look at the Russell 2000. The Russell 2000 is the smaller 2,000 stocks on the American stock markets. And that Russell 2000 is also broken up of a cup and handle and now starting to move up, which shows that it's full risk on mode. And so what I'm seeing here is that even though Bitcoin's correlation with these markets split in the last 3 months, it's probably time to act for the correlation to actually start moving back. Look at the correlation between Bitcoin and silver. So Bitcoin and silver have always moved pretty much at the same time. And then here, all of a sudden, silver's up 112% since April and Bitcoin's flat. That doesn't make sense. Look at the RSIs on the weekly RSIs on Bitcoin and silver. It shows that the Bitcoin silver chart has probably bottomed, and that means that Bitcoin needs to actually catch up to the silver chart. And so this is all giving me hope that there's going to be a massive catch-up trade between Bitcoin and silver is now the fastest moving asset, and you can see it with ETH as well. ETH is moving up faster than Bitcoin is actually moving up. In fact, I mean, relative to Bitcoin, ETH is on a tear. I mean, just look at the ETH price here, 3324, and let's just quickly get the ETH 50-week SMA to see where we're looking at on the weekly with ETH on the SMA. So, unlike Bitcoin, which is in bear market territory, actually ETH is not in bear market territory if you're looking at the bear market territory on the 50-week SMA. And that shows me that Bitcoin may be lagging because you've got all the old hands selling Bitcoin, but the altcoins and the other risk assets are pretty much trying to, are playing catch up to this asset. And what that tells me is that there is a seller out there, or a bunch of sellers, a cohort of sellers. And when that cohort of sellers runs out of coins, we're going to get a massive catch-up trade back to global liquidity, back to the NASDAQ, back to the Mag 7, back to silver, back to gold, and maybe even ETH will lead the way. Then we also look at global liquidity. I mean, as you can see, this is the first time in a long time where Bitcoin has broken away from global liquidity. The reason we think for that is because global liquidity measures liquidity, but doesn't measure global liquidity measures the money in the liquidity, in the system. But it doesn't measure the money that's hoarded by the Feds and the other central banks, right? And if that's a chart, if you want to catch that, you're looking at global net liquidity. That's the chart that looks at global liquidity less the stuff that is locked up in the TGA or on the Fed balance sheet or whatever else. And that's showing you that for the last year or so, or March, that's been on a downtrend. And when that releases again, we're going to start to get an expansion, and then Bitcoin's actually going to start to run. And then you're going to have a big catch-up trade between the Fed or between global money supply and actual Bitcoin. So and the same thing with the Russell 2000. So remember I showed you the Russell 2000. You can see that every time the Russell 2000 breaks out, Bitcoin follows, right? Here it is, here it is, here it is, here it is. And you can see every time we've had that breakout. And so when I look at all this data, I'm more bullish than ever that actually I think the catch-up trade has already started. I think that, I've said it to you before, I didn't believe that this was the end of the bull market, but now I'm doubling down on it and I'm saying I actually think the catch-up trade started. I think we get the FOMC tonight. I think the FOMC tonight resolves. When I say resolves, I think that we will get the best case or the worst case out into the market, and then the run actually continues. And if you were to hold a gun to my head and say make a prediction, I actually make a prediction that Bitcoin closes above $100,000 at the end of December, which is 3 weeks away. I may be wrong. I may be right. Who knows? That's my view. I'm sticking to it. What I can say is that it feels like Tom Lee has the same view. Now, I wanted to play this to you because I think it's actually quite a good clip. Tom Lee has engaged at BitMine. They engaged this guy. I mean, maybe listen to it. It's probably the best thing. Let's try and refresh that and just get you guys the right thing here. There we go.
And then it's gone straight down. I personally think it has a lot to do with deleveraging. And as you know, after the FTX collapse, it did take 8 weeks before market makers recovered and crypto could start to see price discovery again. And we're basically 7.5 weeks past that event. Now, BitMine made a decision about 5 weeks ago to engage 𝗙𝗘𝗧𝗪 because we wanted to understand what was happening with crypto prices. Now, if you don't know who 𝗙𝗘𝗧𝗪 is, he's a legendary market timer.
Stop for a second and just talk about Tom Lee's hair again. That's like a lot of hair, right?
At Fundstrat, I've used him.
It feels like he needs a haircut, right?
To call 2 of the major market lows, the March 2020 low and the April tariff lows. Those were all in coordination and consultation with 𝗙𝗘𝗪. And Tom only has 2 clients today. We're his second client, and he's very expensive actually. Tom has advised us to dramatically slow our Ethereum purchases. And as you can see here, once we engaged Tom, we took a different strategy with regard to our Ethereum purchasing. And you can see our Ethereum purchases fell by half to 50,000 a week. But we've begun to buy Ethereum again. You can see last week we bought almost 100,000 ETH, twice what we did 2 weeks before. And I will give you a hint, we definitely bought more than that this week because we believe Ethereum prices have actually bottomed.
So he's saying that they've engaged this guy who's a timing expert, and the timing expert's basically saying now is the best time to actually start doubling down. And so now what you're starting to see is that he is actually buying ETH like a crazy person. I don't know if you guys have been following the announcement, but these guys have been, I mean, he bought another they've got $13.2 billion, and he's after 10% of the ETH supply, which is absolutely crazy. So it does feel like all the timing is actually happening. And I don't know if you noticed this, but MicroStrategy flipped Amazon in trading volume. Now, what you want is you want energy around these kind of stocks, and there's a lot of energy now around MicroStrategy. So it does feel like everything's starting to turn. When this starts to turn, there'll probably be a big short squeeze on MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy will then start moving up, and then the cycle basically starts again. So that's it. I'm bullish. I mean, I know I'm leaving you guys on a very bullish note, but I'm bullish. I'm flying to Dubai now. One of the things that I'm most excited about flying to Dubai is actually flying with my card again. So this is my solid gold Kast card. It's a crypto card linked to a crypto wallet. And I want to just show you, this thing here. Hold on a second. Just unlock my phone. And I want to show you how it works. Basically, every time you spend on the app, you basically get a notification. So you get, let me just see if you can quickly get this. So, oh man, I'm locked out of the app. But every time you spend on the card, you get a notification on your app, and it automatically tells you how much money you get back. And in this case, I've been getting back like 7% of my purchases. Now, you think that's nothing, but like you go to a restaurant, you spend $100, you get $7 back. You spend $200, you get $14 back. You buy a plane ticket, you spend $2,000, you get $140. You spend $140 back. It's crazy. Like you got to get yourself a crypto card, and I think the Kast card, maybe you won't get the same solid gold one as the one that I've got, but it's very cool. And that's one of the things that I'm very excited about. If you want one of these Kast cards, go down to the description. There's a link. If you take a card on my link, take it before Christmas, and then on Christmas Day, just watch your account, okay? Just watch your account. I may just drop $10,000 into your account because we know which cards are taken out with the run link. So I may play Santa Claus, take a card out of there. You get the most competitive deals, you get the money back. And before Christmas, on Christmas, I will drop $10,000 into one of your accounts. And then I'll tweet out who the actual winner was. So you got between now and Christmas to actually do that. Also, if you want to buy something between now and Christmas, go and get yourself one of the ledgers. There is a link to the ledger site below, and it'll give you the best deals on the ledgers. Also, getting Bitcoin and getting money back. So, chaps, it's the end of the year, more or less. I'm going to see you guys again from Solana, bringing you good news and bringing you all the latest updates. Again, if you've been part of our family and you've been part of everything, thank you. And I wish you guys an amazing and blessed festive season with your loved ones. I wish you guys an amazing year filled with health and wealth and happiness. And I think let's take some time to actually spend some time with our families. And I'll be here if anything happens on the markets. I'll obviously be on Twitter. I'll be bringing you live coverage from Solana. Thank you. Thank you for an unbelievable year together. And I promise you that next year I'll be back here. Well, not only next year, even now during the holidays, I'll be back here and I'll be bringing you the best content out there and continuing on our mission to build the most profitable community in the world. Also, just remember, tomorrow I'm dropping a video on the other channel on Crypto Insider, which tells you why I'm so bullish for about 2026. And then the next video is I'm going to actually show you my 2026 strategy. All right, so I'll see you guys again soon. Until then, trade well, my friends.